Our next speaker is Professor Mikhail Kovalyov, who will share his views on the seismic activity. Mikhail, if you can hear us, so please.
Yes. Okay. I'm not going to use any formulas. I'm going to show you lots of pictures. And it goes a little bit to my constant discussions with Piotr about certain periodicity. He detected periodicity of 12 hours, and I think it should be 12 hours, 15 minutes. And other things, and I thought like, maybe I'll show you a few things to him why I think certain way. However, I start from somewhat remote definitions. And I remind you that 2 points are called antipodal if they're located on the opposite sides of the world. The 2 points located on opposite side of the globe are called antipodal. They're either of this form or of this form, right? You know, this is the map of antipodal points, so the map of antipodes. And so you can see, for example, this point is antipodal to this point. This, where is this, for example? Okay, this point is antipodal to this point. And you can also define antipodes of geographic regions. For example, you see this is the antipode of Africa. Africa is here. Here we have the antipode of South America. You know, we know that most of land is antipodal to water. Only like 4% of Earth's surface is antipodal. It's land antipodal to land. So here is the map of antipode. It's like in Mercator projection. There is a polar map in the polar regions. Now, if you look more carefully, you can notice something rather curious. This is the antipode of Africa. This is North America. You can see how nicely they fit each other. And looking at it, you're going to say, oh yeah, we've seen it. It's called continental drift. No, it cannot be explained by the continental drift of plate tectonics. And I shortly explain why. But before I explain it, please recall what you studied in the second semester calculus. You remember the orientation of sets. This is Africa. If we stand here and look towards Saudi Arabia, you will see that Africa stays on our left. And as Africa drifts, it will stay on our left. Now, this is the antipode of Africa, either this way or this way. We stand the antipode at the antipode of this point. We look at the antipode of Saudi Arabia, and Africa will be on our right. In other words, if this has positive orientation from calculus, this has negative orientation. And as you know, when Africa drifts or moves, the orientation is preserved. This sort of mathematical proof that this cannot drift into its antipodal position. Now, is it true only about Africa? Now, let me show you a rather curious thing. This is a large portion of our continents. I removed all the deep water, and this is the antipode of the continents here. Right now, let's see what happens. I take this thing, copy, and paste and move here. See how nicely the whole thing fits here. It's not continental drift. See how nicely they all fit, right? And so this is one thing. One thing that implies is that if we take, let lambda phi be coordinates here, and lambda capital phi be coordinates here on this boundary. So these coordinates are related by these two equations. In other words, the boundaries of the continents and continental shelves. And these are the continental, these are the continents of the Arctic. You see how nicely they fit together. You see, we can see, okay, let me see how nicely they fit together, as if they were made for each other. Now, if you look at earthquakes, these are all the earthquakes magnitude 7 or higher since 1900. For example, this is the earthquake, this is the antipode of this map. If you look here, this is the earthquakes in this region, and in dark purple. In light purple, we have the antipodes of these earthquakes. You see, they follow almost the same curves as the earthquakes here. And these are the earthquakes here. You see, these things are the antipodes of these earthquakes. You see how nicely they fit together. I took the antipodes of these earthquakes and superimposed them on these earthquakes. You see exactly between them goes. Even if we look at orphan earthquakes, like this one and this one, you see the antipode of this earthquake is very close to this earthquake. The antipodal theory is very dominant. Let's look at powerful earthquakes, for example, magnitude 9 and higher. See, it was struck here, for example, this one in 1964. It was accompanied by powerful seismic activity in an almost antipodal region. Here are two more similar cases involving less powerful earthquakes. Now, an earthquake, the 2011 earthquake, magnitude 9 or higher in Japan, was accompanied by powerful seismic activity here. Similarly, the powerful earthquake in 1960 was accompanied by also powerful activity here. Powerful earthquake here in 1952 was accompanied by powerful seismic activity here. In 1730, there was a powerful earthquake here. It was also accompanied by powerful seismic activity here. So we can see powerful seismic activity appears usually at two almost antipodal regions, almost, not exactly antipodal. Now, how can we explain this? You see, before I attempt to explain it, let me look at these things. For whatever reason, I don't see it mentioned anywhere. Seismologists hate it because they can't explain why. Because it also questions current models of earthquakes. How can we explain it? I don't know whether that's the correct explanation or not. Seems to be fairly reasonable. We can explain it by tunnels crisscrossing the planet. I call them mole holes. Wormholes might be a better name, but it's already reserved for the theory of relativity. So these tunnels, sort of liquid, from somehow the energy propagates there. We can see liquid from the liquid core going here, there, and when it hits here, causes earthquakes. Let's look at least a bit more details. What I think might be happening here, for whatever reason, from liquid pushes here. If here it hits the ocean floor, the crust there is very thin. The energy is absorbed by the water of the crust. Now, another case, it goes here, it hits continental crust, it's very thick, it's being reflected here. And if it's here again, ocean floor, that's it hits the crust there, hits the crust underwater, passes the energy to water, the water absorbs the energy, right? Now, suppose it hits here, and here is continental crust. It's thick, so it reflects back. It goes here, it hits continental crust here again, so it reflects back. Comes here, hits continental crust again. Keeps on going back and forth, back and forth. Whenever it hits here, not whenever, but often when it hits here, it causes earthquakes or volcanic eruption. That would explain many things. You know, eventually it's going to break crust, continental crust, either here or here. That will turn into water. Water will cover this area. So when it moves back and forth, what causes the movement in these tunnels? One thing, I look at the data, increases in tidal force. Due to proximity to new full moon, dash period G, that's when new full moon and period G are separated by less than 11 hours. It happens about every 206 days. Synchronization periods, that's when new full moon is separated from period G by no more than 165 minutes. Now, what you see here are all synchronized new full moon perigees. That is, new full moons, syzygies, separated from nearby perigees by less than 165 minutes, 166 minutes. You can see they come in groups. And you can see here the most powerful seismic events. They more or less coincide with these groups. So I trace this thing here. I go only up to 1960, but I traced it back all the way to 1600. It follows the same pattern. In other words, you see powerful seismic activity occurs only either at these times or when there is a resonance between solar and lunar activity. Now, if these movements, as I showed here, are bound to bring some electric charges from the liquid core, so we can see some of the effects. We may expect that they would cause the movement of in the ionosphere, creating an impression of the unidentified flying objects. So recently, I'm sure you heard of some UFOs in North America. In February 2023, the American government cried they detected 4 UFOs here. Their dates, their locations. The Chinese government claimed they detected a UFO here. Now, what I did, I plotted all the magnitude 6.1 or higher earthquake from 1900. You can see the centers here of intraplate seismic activity. You can see that UFO here was detected right above this center. This UFO here was detected right between these two. This UFO here was detected right here, and this UFO here right next to it. So you see, we see UFOs appearing right next to the centers of intraplate seismic activity. We have similar picture here. Here, to make picture a little bit more readable, I restricted myself to magnitude 7.5 earthquakes. You can see there is one standing here away from tectonic lines. It was very powerful, one of the most powerful earthquakes in the region, and the Chinese UFOs right next to it. Now, just a month ago, some people published a nice paper where they put frequencies of UFOs per 10,000 people, per million people, doesn't matter. Here are the earthquakes since 1600. Magnitude, I think, 6 point something, let me see. Yeah, just a certain magnitude, don't remember. And this is the seismic hazard. The map was created by USGS of the United States, reflecting what they consider to be the most seismically active regions. You can see there are UFOs here. That's the center of earthquakes here. That's what USGS views the seismic hazard. There are UFOs here. There was a powerful earthquake here, and there is a seismic hazard here. There was 1886 earthquake here. USGS views as a seismically active area here, and we see center of UFOs. You can see 3 UFO centers of UFOs here. That's exactly what we call the New Madrid seismic zone, and all powerful earthquakes here. Now, the most prominent part coincide exactly with the earthquakes that occurred there in the last century. Now, you can see this boundary here. You can see this is a large region of UFOs. It follows here along this formerly seismically active region, and then continues along the Rocky Mountains. So you can see also this is more seismically active area, right? It was interesting, and now it's not merely interesting. Tell you something you may find hard to believe. In 2014, in February, had a great job in Samsung's university called Sangkyuan University, SKKU. And I looked at the data, and the data showed me that there would be increase in UFOs. So since my job involved a lot of travel, my family was in the Philippines, I was in Korea, I decided to quit my job as I expected. Bunch of crashes came about. Now you see, these are the airplanes that crashed at the same time as expected. There were also a lot of close calls when a lot of airplanes barely avoided accidents. Now, also this thing, I can brag a little bit that several months before that, I uploaded a file in ResearchGate that I also said there would be an increased probability of UFOs at exactly this time. So they're fully predictable. Well, not fully predictable. a certain point. Now, if you look at, now you can see this, what's happening in the sky. Here I present a graph of cosmic rays. It's from the Moscow monitor. And what's interesting that it shows 27-day variability. 27-day variability in cosmic rays is not unusual. What's unusual here is very nice shape. Look how nicely the tops or crests follow, almost like they follow a sine curve. Here, we forget about this thing because this drop was caused by solar flare. And if we follow the bottoms of the troughs, they also follow a sine line only of twice the frequency of the tops, right? I can't explain that, but the question is, but if you look at these pictures, you see the period of close calls started from here and ended here. That's more or less 2014, December 1st, plus minus 2 years. The period of airplane crashes when 7 airplanes, commercial airplanes, I'm not talking about small airplanes, military planes, crashed within nearly 23 months. It was a lot of it in the newspaper. Those of you who are older remember those days. Also, it was 2014, 11, 15, within a year of this date. The period of cosmic rays was also lasted about, like you see, this date plus minus 4 months. In 2019, the government of the United States announced that the Navy Air Force, Navy airplanes witness UFOs almost every day during this period. So you see, everything is centered on November 2014. What was there? Now, that's sort of a good question, but if you think about it, it's not that hard to figure out. Some of you is going to ask me, what is the solar maximum? If you look at sunspot numbers, then the solar maximum was in April 2014. But if you think about it, immediately realize that maybe sunspot numbers isn't exactly what should be important here, but more solar magnetic flux. And indeed, the solar magnetic flux reached its maximum in the end of October, beginning of November. So you see, it seems to fall into, everything falls into good patterns. Now, you can show a lot of similarities, a lot of correlation between all the phenomena here. I'm not going to go into details. I finished a little bit, like a few minutes earlier. I'd like to go back to the original picture and show that this symmetry, the antipodal symmetry, whether my explanation shown here is correct or not, I'm not going to discuss, but the symmetry, the antipodal symmetry shown by this picture and by this picture and by the earthquakes, and you could see it in many other forms and shapes, is extremely important. I see people using a lot of complicated math to describe earthquakes, to describe seismic activity, but somehow I rarely see this mentioned. As a matter of time, seismologists dislike it. It took me quite a while to publish it. It was rejected several times. The funny thing is, when I submitted to archive this paper, a much simpler version, it was years ago, I was immediately banned from archive. I'm no longer allowed to post anything there. Apparently, this is viewed as something inappropriate. But as you see from these pictures there, right? If we look here, you don't need to do any complicated math. Just look at the picture and see how nicely these things fit here, right? So before we do any math, before we do it, this has to be absorbed into any existing theory. So it's not merely a theoretical thing. It involves real airplane accidents results. It's connected to what they call UFOs and modern day terminology, UAP, unknown atmospheric phenomena. It's related to real things. And that's about all I wanted to say. So I stop here. Hold on. Let me see. I try to unshare my screen. I start video so you can see my face.
Yes, and
Right.
we thank you for your talk. thank you here. And now I invite people to ask you questions about what you have
Okay.
told us. Okay, so the first person is Robert.
I have one
Unless,
question.
we don't have questions here in the audience, so Robert, you can ask your question.
Okay, thanks. I have one question to you, Mikhail. There are many very interesting things which you presented, really very interesting. For me, almost all they are new, but I would like to know what part of this news are yours. I mean, you are out of them, or
All of it. All of it.
All of them. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's no other people, no other group who work on that and which has similar results. Yes. There's no.
No.
Okay. Did you publish something from
Well,
this?
I published some, but publishing these results are very, very, very difficult. Things are rejected. This cannot be true. When I submitted this for the first time, I got a reply at this antipodal similarity. This cannot be true because there is no scientific reason for that to be true.
And how long do you work on that?
For about 10 years.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions?
So Jerzy Metelski is from this side. So very interesting feature. You gave some interesting observations, but what is, let's say, also on the table is that the ultra dense objects which could pass through the Earth and make the connections between the opposite sides of the Earth's surface, and there were it was estimated, it was, you know, the idea of V10 from 84, and that they exist, and then some people were trying to develop also assess the number of such passages through the Earth and things like this. So perhaps it could be some junction between the site on the opposite side of the Earth, but not only, because not every of such an ultra dense object can penetrate Earth through the center of the Earth. Yes, the majority of the cases should be just a peripheral. Yes, so
Okay,
yeah. So
I understand your question. What you're telling me is, let me see, how can something pass through the center of the Earth? It's solid, right? That's what you're asking me, right?
So I'm proposing that it could be the ultra dense object. So with the density of the neutron star, and for this such an object, the Earth is just like a foam, yes, which can be.
No, there is no need for such complicated assumptions. In reality, when it goes through the center, it does not have to be the liquid itself passing through the center. It could be the energy. You see, it just happened that before I got interested in these things, I worked on solitons. Have you heard of the theory of solitons? Solitons are lumps of energy. That's essentially what they are. They can go through matter. And you see, you have this, suppose the liquid from the liquid core goes there to the surface, and it goes back, it hits the solid core. And then it forms a string of solitons that go to the opposite side, they reach the opposite side and cause the movement of the liquid there. The liquid there goes there, reflects, hit the solid core, and it generates a sequence of solitons and goes like this. So we don't need to invoke anything like ultra-dense subjects. Within the existing physics, we can attribute it to solitons. The problem is that three-dimensional solitons mostly exist in qualitative discussion. The theory of solitons is very well developed for one-dimensional cases. For close to one-dimensional, two-dimensional cases. But in the cases of already 2 dimensions, the math becomes very difficult. In 3 space dimensions, God knows what. There is no math there. You see, the theory was developed by Martin Kruskal years ago. He's no longer with us. He passed away several years ago. And I talked to Martin, and he told me, like, look, I think they exist, but it's hard to handle them mathematically. So you see, the fact that these things do exist. And I showed some things like working with 2-dimensional waves. So we don't really need to invoke super dense or ultra dense or any special matter. You see, I didn't want to discuss it because it would take a while to discuss the subtleties of this, but there is no need for it. But on the other hand, what's happening inside the Earth, we don't really know. About 150 years ago, someone examined seismic waves. They saw P waves and S waves moving in a certain way, and they concluded there is a solid core, and around it there is a liquid core. Since then, we've learned a lot of things. We've learned that there are other states of matter, for example, Bose-Einstein condensate, and anything can happen there. So maybe you're right. Maybe something is forming inside the Earth. I don't know. The truth is, the temperature there is so high, and the density is so high that we can't even imagine what's happening there. So on one hand, I say, yeah, we don't really need those objects like ultra dense or something. On the other hand, I don't know. You see, the data shows that there is a symmetry there. There is almost antipodal symmetry. I use the word almost because the events occur not at exactly symmetric locations, but almost symmetrically, not at exactly the same time, but at very close times. It allowed me to forecast certain events. I mean, you could check my posting there. So there must be a grain of truth to all that. But how things work out inside the Earth, I don't know. And your guess is as good as mine, right? So that's all I can say.
Okay, thank you for your response. Any more questions? I see Piotr who's ready to ask one.
I'm just moving so that you see not only the back of my head.
That's okay.
Thank you, Mikhail. As you already know that I'm your fan, I'm very much interested in your work. Thank you for giving this talk here. Maybe we can have a larger group where we can discuss these things and how to move on with publishing something. One question for now, you already know, but maybe repeating does not hurt. So in your table where you connect these synchronization events with major earthquakes, you also have earthquake events which happen before this minimum synchronization. So how would you explain this, for instance, if you go back, or maybe you don't need to, but the top of the page, I think it was 2010, I don't know. There is a major earthquake which happens 30 days before this syzygy event. So how would you propose to explain this?
Okay, let me see. Let me go what we're talking about. First of all, the definition of synchronization. I picked, like in the paper I sent to you before, I picked number 148 minutes. Why did I pick 148 minutes? To fit it into 2 pages. Maybe 165 minutes more appropriate. If you put 165 minutes, then everything falls nicely. Let me share the screen if I can, so you can see it. You can see here.
Yes, so I mean 2021 Hunga Tonga.
221. it happens within this period, 2021, 12/4.
No, but you have
Tonga, 12.
4 minute with this exceptionally low synchronization gap. So very good synchronization, 4 minutes.
Yeah, yes, that's exactly when you see, remember this thing? Hold on, let me see if I can. That's exactly when this thing happened, a few days afterwards. No, 4, yes, 1/4. You see, you're asking me why it didn't happen in January, but it happened. Oh yeah, it's 2021.
But I now see it's another year. Sorry, I now see it's another year. But maybe we can have another example. So for instance,
It was
2012.
here.
Let's see the 2012. It's in May, and the Indonesia earthquake is in.
Yeah, okay.
So it's
Yes,
before.
I know. You see, if you look at this, it's a combination of several things. Now I can stop sharing.
Yes, the combination is satisfactory because we also see a combination. So not only gravity should be involved if we want to explain. That's okay.
You see, it's
so we need something more.
No, it's a combination. Let me see. Okay, let me reshare it again so I explain how I see it. Share. You see, let's, which one? This one. The synchronization period introduced increased tidal forces, oscillating more or less regularly. Now, if you look, for example, which earthquakes you're talking about? 2012. You can see 2012 411 followed.
Yes,
a combination
2012 411. Yes,
yeah,
this
it
happened
followed
before this.
It followed
2 minutes synchronization.
Yeah, look, it followed 411, but it wasn't like it was before then.
Exactly.
Okay, let me go to something. I want to show something. This is, let's go, which one you want? 12, right? Calculate. This table shows perigees and how far they're removed from full moon or new moon. You can see, can you see the pointer now?
Yes.
Can you see May 6? On May 6, perigee was separated from full moon by less than an hour.
Yes.
But on April 7, it was separated by less than 21 hours, less than 22 hours. So you see, the tidal force does not just increase on May 6, it's also April 7.
No, but this is not according your assumptions of the your definition of
you
this
see,
synchronization period.
Yes,
so
but you see,
if we admit larger period, larger interval, if we admit 24 hours, we will have many more points where we can expect something, and ultimately, we might expect an earthquake anytime. So it's then too many opportunities to predict something, so to say. If you define your window sharply, and then you disregard this definition, it's then less convincing.
Okay, let me see. Can you see? Let me see. Let me go back.
21 hour
again.
Separation happens quite often.
Hold on. No. Hold on. I know what you're saying. Let's go to previous years. Let me go. You see, core perigee, core synchronized. You see, what happens is, okay, let me put it this way. The thing goes synchronized perigees, new moon perigees, and their influence extends both here and here. They're not restricted to a single day. You see, what we have here, again, it's kind of hard to explain. No, here, they're not synchronized anymore. You see, there are 5 hours, so it's not that strong.
No,
you understand what I'm saying? It's a bit more
5 hours
complicated.
is not
when I
strong, and
presented it, I made it
21
a little
hours
bit
is strong,
simpler.
and it's not convincing again. Sorry, but I understand the concept. I'm only telling that explaining, and I think you agree, that
sharing.
explaining the earlier earthquake, I mean earthquake that precedes the syzygy, requires additional factor. So it's not explainable with pure gravity anymore. So that's my assumption, and I think you
Well,
agree
the
with-
additional,
yeah.
yes, the additional factor comes from, you see, look at this earthquake, 4/11, right? 11 April, 11th
For
April.
instance,
But
yes,
it was
yes.
preceded by full moon, period G, and lunar node.
Yes,
So it was
exactly.
still close. So these things also contributed,
So
right?
lunar
So it
node,
does,
yes,
yes.
yes.
And
Lunar node is maybe additional factor, and yes,
it
that-
is. And if you, for example, let's look at 2011 earthquake, the earthquake in Japan, right? Yeah, it was few days before this synchronized CGG period G, but you see, it was also preceded by coronal mass ejection that landed on Earth just a few hours earlier.
Yeah, yes, and here we are exactly at the concern we have with the cosmoseismic effect, that electromagnetic activity of the sun seems to play an important role. So we are on the same page.
Oh yeah, if you, for example, I already mentioned, let me see if I can go. It's a 1730 earthquake, right? If you look at it, you can say, well, there was nothing in 1730. There was no synchronized CCG period G. That's why I mentioned to you that there are several factors that affected the three. Where are they? Where are the factors? Oh yeah, here. There is tidal force, geomagnetic activity due to solar activity, and resonance and lunar activities. Now, let me show you something. If I can you stop sharing? And I show you another thing. Let me hold on.
Mikhail,
This is 1730.
I'm sorry. So
Okay.
we need to move on. So what I would propose is that we organize a separate meeting, or we can go on with this discussion on a weekly basis. Despite instead of this, we can also move into the discussion point which will happen today. But
Okay,
during
I
the
entirely
others.
agree with you. Yeah.
Yes,
Okay, I know the time is limited. I
I'm
know.
sorry that, yes, to interrupt
no.
you, but you're very welcome to be present on our next discussion session. And so let us thank Mikhail once again.